Welcome, and settle in for a little while. Let your breathing slow. Let the day drift gently away. Tonight, we are going far back into the past, to the quiet fields and small villages of medieval England in the 1300s. There are no bright city lights here, no engines, no humming wires, and no hurried footsteps on paved roads. Instead, there are soft paths of packed earth, low cottages of wood and clay, little church bells in the distance, and the sound of wind moving through open farmland. As you listen, imagine a cool morning mist resting over the fields. The sky is still pale, not yet fully awake. A narrow path curves between vegetable plots and fenced animals. Smoke rises slowly from a few village hearths. Somewhere nearby, a rooster calls into the stillness, and from a wooden byre comes the quiet movement of cattle waiting to be fed. This is not the life of kings or castles, though those things existed in the same world. This is the life of ordinary people, farmers, shepherds, village women baking coarse bread, children carrying water, old men mending tools, and laborers bending over fields that must feed their families through all the turning seasons. Their lives are simple in some ways, hard in many ways, and deeply tied to the land beneath their feet. Tonight, we will move slowly through this world. We will not rush. We will walk the village lanes, look inside the homes, sit by the fire, notice the clothes people wear, the meals they prepare, and the rhythm of a day shaped by weather, soil, daylight, and duty. We will see how ordinary villagers lived, not in grand halls, but in humble homes, with simple possessions and familiar routines repeated again and again, year after year. So let your thoughts grow quiet. Imagine the cool air of morning on your face. Hear the rustle of straw, the low murmur of livestock, the distant sound of someone splitting wood. And together, very gently, let us step into medieval England. We're in England in the 1300s, a land of fields, woodland edges, marshy places, streams, and scattered villages. Most people do not live in towns. They live in the countryside, where life is close to the earth. A village may be made up of only a few dozen homes gathered around a church, a common green, or a muddy road that becomes difficult in winter and dry and dusty in summer. The village itself is small, but its world feels complete. There is the church, often the strongest stone building in the area, with a bell that marks the hours of prayer and worship, and also quietly shapes the village sense of time. There are peasant cottages made of timber, woven branches, clay, and thatch. There are barns, animal pens, kitchen gardens, and strips of farmland stretching outward into the open fields beyond the homes. The countryside is not neatly divided in the modern way. Much of the farmland is worked in long, narrow strips held by different families, but lying side by side in great shared fields. A man may walk some distance from one strip to another, because his land is not always in one tidy block. The open field system shapes much of village life. People sow, plow, and harvest with attention not only to their own work, but also to the seasonal customs of the whole community. The air in medieval England is filled with natural smells: damp soil after rain, wood smoke curling from cottage roofs, the sweet dusty scent of hay in summer, animal smells from cattle, pigs, chickens, and sheep, fresh-cut herbs, wet wool, baking bread if grain has been kind that year. In autumn there may be apples crushed underfoot in the orchard. In winter, the sharp cold may carry almost no scent at all, except smoke and frost. The landscape changes deeply with the seasons, and these changes matter. Spring is not only beautiful, it is work beginning again. Summer is not only warm, it is the season of labor under long daylight. Autumn brings gathering, storing, preserving, and watching the sky. Winter brings hunger for some, stillness for others, mending, waiting, and enduring cold rooms with little daylight. Most villagers know the land around them intimately. They know which patch of ground dries first after rain, where mushrooms may sometimes be found, where the hedges shelter birds, where rabbits may be seen, and which path turns to thick mud after a storm. Knowledge is practical and passed quietly from one generation to the next. There is no quick separation between home and work. Home is work. The field is work. The yard, the hearth, the spinning stool, the bread oven, the animal pen, the well, the path to the mill, the churchyard, all are part of one woven daily life. People rise with light and rest with darkness, especially in the colder months when candles are precious and daylight is the most useful gift of all. If you were to stand in such a village at dawn, you would notice how softly the day begins. There is no sudden burst of noise. One door opens. A woman shakes a cloth outside. A child rubs sleep from tired eyes. A man checks the sky. A dog moves through the lane. Smoke begins to rise from a low roof. The world wakes one small sound at a time. And above all this is the sky, broad and ever-changing. Medieval villagers spend much of life beneath it. They notice clouds, winds, moonlight, frost and rain, not as background, but as part of survival itself. A run of wet weather can trouble planting. A late frost can bring worry. A good harvest can feel like a relief breathed across the whole village. This is the setting of ordinary life in medieval England, a world of narrow margins, strong routines, shared labor, and quiet beauty. Let us enter the village in the early morning, when the light is thin and silver. The cottages are low and modest. Many are built with timber frames, their spaces filled with wattle and daub, a mixture of woven wood and clay-like plaster. Their roofs are thick with thatch, made from straw or reeds. Seen from a little distance, they seem to grow from the land itself, their colors soft and earthy, their walls uneven, their roofs weathered by wind and rain. The lane between them is not smooth. It is rutted, muddy in wet weather, dry and rough in warmer days. Chickens scratch near the doorway of one house. A pig noses around a fence. A cartwheel leans against a wall. There may be bundles of kindling, a broken tool waiting to be repaired, a wooden bucket or a stool left outside after yesterday's work. A village home in the 1300s is usually small. For many ordinary people, there is one main room where much of life happens. Cooking, eating, warming, mending, talking, resting, and sometimes sleeping all take place in the same shared space. Some houses may have a loft or a separate area, but space is limited, and privacy is very different from what we might expect today. Inside, the morning is dim. Light enters through small openings or simple windows, sometimes covered with cloth, shutters, or thin material rather than clear glass. The floor may be earth, packed hard by many feet. In some homes, reeds or rushes are spread on the floor, though these must be changed from time to time. The room carries the smell of smoke, old straw, cooked grain, damp wool, and people living closely together. At the center of the home is the hearth. Fire means warmth, cooking, and comfort. A fire may be kept alive carefully, banked at night so it can be stirred again in the morning. Starting a fire from nothing is not something people want to do if they can avoid it. Around this fire, the family's day begins. You might see a pot hanging over embers. Someone kneels to stir ashes. Someone else adds fuel, perhaps small sticks first, then heavier wood if any is available. Firewood is valuable, and so is time. Every action in the morning is purposeful. Beds are simple. Some people sleep on straw-filled mattresses or rough bedding laid on benches or wooden frames. Blankets are heavy and practical. Linen, if present, is valued. In poorer homes, sleeping spaces may be crowded, shared, and not especially soft. The cold of the night often lingers into the morning, especially in winter, and leaving the bed can be an uncomfortable moment. Still, the day begins. A villager rises not because an alarm sounds, but because the sky lightens, the animals must be seen to, and work waits outside. The rhythm of life follows daylight. In summer, this can mean very early mornings. In winter, the late sunrise may grant a little more darkness, but also a shorter working day. The ordinary medieval cottage is not filled with many objects. Everything in it has use. A few stools, a table or board for preparing food, wooden bowls, perhaps clay pots, maybe a chest for storing clothing or valued household goods. Iron items are useful and precious. A knife may serve many tasks. A spoon may be carved from wood. Cloth is mended carefully. Rope is saved. Nothing useful is wasted lightly. The hearth blackens the roof timbers over time. Smoke can linger in the room, especially in poorer homes, where smoke does not escape easily. Eyes grow used to it. Clothes carry its scent. It becomes part of daily life. In cold weather, this smoky room can still feel like safety, because outside there is wind, rain, and hard ground underfoot. The walls do little to keep out all cold. Thatched roofs help, but winter still enters through cracks and gaps. People know how to live with chill fingers, with breath visible in the air, with water cold enough to sting the skin. Warmth is not something that fills the whole house evenly. It gathers close to the fire and fades a few steps away. Households may include not only parents and children, but sometimes older relatives, servants, or laborers, depending on status and need. Animals may be kept very near the home, and in some cases close enough to contribute body heat, smell, and sound to the shared living environment. Life is close, practical, and rarely quiet for long during the day. Storage matters greatly. Grain must be kept safe. Salt, if available, is useful. Dried peas, beans, onions, and other staples are held carefully. Small stores of food mean security. A full chest or a hanging sack of grain may bring comfort in uncertain times. An empty shelf brings worry. The possessions people value are not decorative in the modern sense. A sturdy cloak, a good pot, a serviceable pair of shoes, a stronger plow blade, a blanket, a healthy cow, a few hens, all these matter deeply. Wealth for ordinary villagers is often measured not in coins seen often, but in food, tools, animals, land rights, and the ability to endure a poor season. As the village fully awakes, the routines of the body begin. Washing is simple. Water must be carried, and heating it takes fuel and time. People wash as they can, often with a basin or a cloth, not with long bathing rituals. Cleanliness exists, but it follows practical limits. Hands and faces may be washed, especially before meals or church, though the standards and habits vary. Clothing is plain, durable, and made to last. Most ordinary people wear garments of wool or linen. Wool is common and useful in England's climate. A man might wear a tunic belted at the waist, hose for the legs, and simple shoes or boots. A woman might wear a long gown, an apron, a kirtle and a head covering if custom or modesty requires. Colors in village life are often muted, though natural dyes can provide soft browns, greens, blues, and faded reds depending on means and materials. Clothing is not changed endlessly. Garments are repaired again and again. A tear is sewn, worn fabric patched, hems adjusted, laces retied. Good clothing for church or feast days is treated with care. Everyday work clothes show the marks of real labor: mud at the hem, ash at the sleeve, wear at the elbows, roughness at the knees. Shoes are important, but not always abundant. In wet weather, the condition of footwear matters. Mud, cold, and long walking can make poor shoes a daily misery. Yet even worn shoes are kept and mended because replacing them is not easy. Hair is simple, often covered, tied back, or kept practical for work. Jewelry among ordinary villagers is limited. A useful belt, a clasp, or a small token may be treasured, but display is not the center of life here. The body is dressed for function, modesty, labor, weather, and custom. Morning hunger arrives early when the day begins with work. Breakfast in medieval village life is usually modest. For many ordinary people, the first meal may be a little bread, pottage left from the day before, ale of weak strength, or perhaps some cheese when available. Pottage is one of the central foods of ordinary life, a thick, soft dish made from grains or vegetables, simmered slowly in a pot over the fire. It can change with the season and with what is available. Beans, peas, onions, leeks, oats, barley, cabbage, herbs, all might find their way into it. This is not a world of rich morning feasts for most people. Food must stretch, grain must last. What matters most is that the meal gives enough strength to begin the day's labor. Bread, when available, is central, but bread varies greatly. Fine white bread is not for everyone. Ordinary villagers more often eat darker bread made from coarser grains. Barley, rye, oats, and mixed grains may be used, depending on region, status, and harvest. The texture may be dense. The loaf may be simple and uneven. Still, warm bread from the oven is one of the deep comforts of life. Ale is common because water sources are not always reliable and because brewing is part of household economy. The ale consumed daily is often weak by modern standards, nourishing in its way and familiar. It belongs to the rhythm of meals and work. Children eat with the family as they are able. The very old eat more slowly. A busy morning meal may pass with little conversation beyond what is needed. There is wood to chop, grain to grind, animals to feed, tools to gather, paths to walk, and fields waiting beneath the growing daylight. As the meal ends, bowls are cleared, scraps saved, and the day moves outward. A woman may begin one set of tasks, while a man begins another, though many duties overlap and shift with necessity. Children old enough to help will help. Even the smallest acts matter in a household where survival depends on many hands. Outside, the morning has brightened now. Mist lifts from the ground. The church tower stands more clearly against the sky. A cart creaks somewhere along the lane. A dog barks once, then settles. The village is fully awake. And with that, the working day in medieval England quietly begins. Now that the village is awake, the morning begins to unfold into work. In medieval England, for ordinary villagers, daily life is shaped by repetition. The same paths are walked each day, the same tools are lifted, the same animals are fed, the same smoke rises from the same hearths, and the same hands return again and again to the tasks that keep a household alive. Life is not lived in sudden change, but in familiar rhythm. Most people in the village are tied in one way or another to farming.
Even those who do not spend all day in the fields still live by the success of the land. A good harvest brings steadiness. A weak harvest brings worry that can settle quietly over the entire community. The earth is not simply scenery, it is the source of bread, ale, fodder, rent, and survival. As the sun climbs a little higher, men and older boys begin walking toward the open fields. Some carry simple tools over their shoulders, a hoe, a rake, a wooden-handled spade, or an iron-bladed implement that has already been repaired many times. Their pace is not hurried, but steady. There is much to do, and daylight cannot be wasted. The fields are often wide and open, not enclosed into small private squares, but arranged in long, narrow strips. Each family may hold several strips spread across the open land. This means a villager may walk from one part of the field to another through the morning, working a little here, then moving on. The system depends on shared custom, and village life is full of such shared understandings. At certain times of year, one hears the scrape of plows through the soil. In other seasons, the sound is lighter, the brushing movement of weeding, the tying of bundles, the soft cut of a sickle through grain. In spring, there is planting, careful and hopeful. In summer, there is growth and maintenance. In late summer and autumn, there is the great labor of harvest, when many hands are needed at once. Winter changes the work, but never ends it. Some fields are planted with wheat, if the land and means allow it, others with barley, rye, or oats. Beans and peas are important too, not grand foods, but steady ones. Villagers know that not every patch of land behaves the same. Some ground is rich and dark, some is stony, some holds water too long, some dries too quickly. These details are not written in books for ordinary farmers. They are learned by foot, by eye, and by memory. In the cool hours of the morning, work can feel almost peaceful. The air is fresher then, before the warmth of the day settles in. Dew clings to the edges of grass. Birds move through the hedges. The sky, wide and pale above the fields, slowly brightens from silver to gentle gold. A man working the land does not simply perform one task and return home. His day is a chain of effort. If oxen are being used, they must be handled patiently. If seed is being cast, it must be cast evenly. If weeds are growing thick, they must be pulled or cut before they steal too much from the crop. Every season asks different things of the body. The work is physical, repetitive, and often tiring long before noon. Bending, lifting, carrying, turning the soil, leading animals, repairing fences, gathering brush, clearing stones, all of it wears the hands and back. The body learns these movements from childhood. Shoulders strengthen, palms harden, knees feel the ground. Clothing collects dust, plant stems, and the smell of sweat and sun. But not all labor happens in the large fields. Around the cottage, much is already underway. Women's work in medieval village life is constant and essential. It includes cooking, brewing, baking, cleaning, spinning, gathering fuel, tending gardens, carrying water, feeding poultry, helping with harvests, and often much more besides. The work of the home is not separate from survival, it is survival.
A woman may step from the house with a basket on one arm and a child trailing behind her. She may collect herbs from the garden, check the hens for eggs, shake out cloth, or carry a bucket toward the water source. If dough was prepared earlier, it may need tending. If ale is being brewed, it must be watched. If wool is being spun, time must be found for it between other tasks. No hour is empty. The kitchen garden beside a cottage can be modest but deeply important. Cabbages, onions, leeks, garlic, beans, peas, perhaps parsley, sage, or other herbs may grow there.
These small plots add variety and nourishment to otherwise simple meals. A family that tends its garden carefully may eat a little better, especially when times are lean. Chickens scratch near the yard, and they too matter. Eggs are useful. Feathers are useful. Even the smallest animals in village life have a place in the household economy. A pig, if a family can keep one, is an even greater resource. A cow can mean milk, and milk can mean butter or cheese. Sheep bring wool, and wool means warmth, trade, and clothing. Every living thing around the home has value. Children in medieval England are part of village life from the beginning. They are not kept apart from the world of work for very long. Even when very young, they observe everything around them: the stirring of the pot, the stacking of kindling, the handling of a hen, the tying of bundles, the patching of clothes, the walking of field paths. As soon as they are old enough, they begin helping in small ways. A child may carry water in a smaller vessel. Another may gather eggs, watch geese, collect fallen sticks, or mind a younger sibling. Older children may help scare birds from crops, assist in harvest, herd animals, turn hay, or run small errands between house and field. Their clothing is simple, like that of their elders, and often passed down, altered, patched, and used again. Childhood exists, certainly, but not in a separate protected world full of leisure. It is woven into the household, where everyone's effort matters according to their age and strength. Yet even so, children find moments of play. A stick can become a toy. A field edge can become a place of chasing and laughter for a few minutes between duties. A dog may be followed. A smooth stone may be pocketed and treasured. Joy exists in village life, though it is often brief and simple. In the churchyard, on the lane, near the well, children would have been seen and heard, moving through the same spaces as adults, learning by watching, learning by doing, becoming, in time, the next keepers of these routines. As the morning advances, clothing becomes part of labor itself. A wool tunic warms the body in cool air, but can feel heavy in damp weather. Linen beneath may offer some comfort, though many garments are coarse by modern standards. Aprons protect dresses and tunics. Cloaks are used when needed, especially in colder seasons or when the weather turns. Because cloth is valuable, garments are made to endure. Wool can be spun, woven, and sewn at home or in local production. It is one of the foundations of English life in this period. Even if a villager owns only a few garments, each one has taken labor to produce. Sheep must be kept, wool must be cleaned, carded, spun, woven, cut, and stitched. Clothing begins long before it hangs from a person's shoulders. Shoes are worn hard by village life. Mud, sharp stones, wet grass, rough paths, and long hours on foot all leave their mark. A cracked shoe or worn sole is not thrown away if it can still be mended. Leather is too valuable. Many households know the quiet discipline of keeping things going as long as possible. Head coverings are common for women, especially married women, and practical as well as modest. Hair is kept tidy for work. Sleeves are rolled or tied when labor demands it. Belts hold knives, purses, keys, or small useful tools. In ordinary life, appearance is closely linked to utility. And yet, even among simple people, there is some care for dignity. Clothes may be brushed. Better garments may be saved for church or feast days. A ribbon, a better buckle, or cloth dyed a little more richly can still bring quiet pride. Even in hard conditions, people notice one another. They always have. By late morning, hunger returns. For ordinary villagers, food is plain, filling, and repetitive. Much depends on grain. Bread remains central, and so does pottage. This soft, simmered dish can sit near the hearth and change gently over time, with ingredients added as they are available. It is practical because it feeds many mouths from one pot and makes use of humble foods. A household pot might hold oats or barley thickened with peas, onions, leeks, and herbs. On fortunate days, there may be a little bacon, a scrap of salted meat, or dripping for flavor. On poorer days, it may be thin, but still warm. Cabbage, beans, and root vegetables make frequent appearances. A little cheese, a crust of bread, or a handful of onions can transform a simple meal into something welcome. Milk is used where available, though it does not keep long. Cheese and butter are ways of preserving some of its value. Eggs are useful and flexible. Fish may appear depending on location, season, and religious observance. In some times and places, herring and other preserved fish play an important role. Meat is less common for the poor than many imagine. It is present, but not as a daily abundance. A midday meal may be eaten in the field during busy seasons or back near the home if work is closer by. People sit on the ground, on a bench, on a low step, or simply stand and eat what can be carried. Bread wrapped in cloth, cheese cut with a knife, a portion of pottage ladled earlier into a wooden bowl, ale in a cup. Little is wasted. The act of eating is usually practical but not joyless. There is comfort in familiar food, warm steam rising from a bowl, a loaf broken by hand, the brief pause in the middle of labor, the chance to straighten the back and let the hands rest. In these small moments, one sees that village life is not only hardship, it also holds steady forms of contentment. In autumn, the table may briefly widen. There might be more fresh produce, apples, nuts, or a little more ale after brewing. At certain times, feast days connected with the church year may bring better food than usual. But for most days, most households return to the same reliable foundations: grain, vegetables, a little dairy, and whatever else the season allows. As midday approaches, the village itself is never entirely still.
From one cottage comes the low, turning rhythm of spinning. Spinning is one of those quiet, endless tasks that fill many hours. Wool is worked into thread, thread into future cloth. Fingers learn the motion until it becomes almost as natural as breathing. This labor is easy to overlook from a distance, but it supports clothing, trade, and household need. Elsewhere, someone mends a broken basket. Someone sharpens a blade on stone. At another house, dough is kneaded on a board dusted with meal. At the edge of the village, a man checks a fence where animals have been pressing against it. Another repairs part of a cart. Nearby, someone cleans a pot with sand and water, scrubbing away yesterday's soot and residue. The sounds are modest, but together they form the living texture of the village. Wooden wheels creak. A hen calls after laying. A child laughs and is hushed. A hammer strikes a peg. Sheep bleat in the distance. Geese complain noisily. Wind brushes through thatch. Somewhere, perhaps farther away, a church bell marks the passing of time with a tone that spreads softly over fields and roofs. The bell matters. Not everyone owns a timepiece. Most do not. Time is known by light, by habit, by hunger, by the movement of shadows, and by the church. The rhythm of worship and the rhythm of work are interwoven. Holy days interrupt ordinary labor. Seasonal celebrations gather around the religious calendar. Even for those most occupied with survival, the church is part of the fabric of life. Although farming shapes the village, not every task is fieldwork. There may be a miller working at the local mill, where villagers bring grain to be ground into meal or flour. The mill is a necessary place, tied to both daily food and local obligations. There may be a blacksmith nearby or in the next settlement,
essential for horseshoes, nails, fittings, and the repair of iron tools. A carpenter may be called on to shape wood for carts, doors, furniture, and simple building work. A reeve or local officer may help manage village duties connected to the manor. Some villagers serve in ways connected to landholding and custom rather than craft. They may owe labor on the Lord's land, pay rent in produce or work, or perform seasonal duties that are expected of them. The structure of society is present even in ordinary routines. Life is local, but never entirely free from obligation. Women, too, may take small goods to market, sell eggs, cheese, cloth, or ale, or exchange labor and assistance with neighbors. Household economies are often flexible, pieced together from many small efforts rather than one single source of coin. Money exists, of course, but much of ordinary life is still rooted in goods, labor, dues, and direct need. The village depends on cooperation more than it may first appear. At harvest, people need one another. When a roof needs thatching, help may be shared. When an animal strays, someone notices. When illness enters a home, neighbors may quietly respond. Life is hard, but it is not lived alone. Now the morning has passed into the fuller brightness of day. The mist is gone. The lane is more active. Doors stand open. Smoke rises straighter if the wind has calmed. The fields shimmer a little in the light. A crow crosses above the stubble. Somewhere in the village, a baby cries, then quiets. Somewhere else, a woman beats dust from a cloth outside her doorway. Inside the cottages, the dimness remains, even in daylight. A shaft of sun may fall through a small opening and catch floating smoke in the air. A bench worn smooth by years of use sits near the wall. A pot hangs over the hearth. A loaf cools under cloth. Beside it lies a knife, carefully placed, ready for the next meal. This is the middle of an ordinary day in medieval England, not a festival, not a battle, not a courtly tale, but the steady life of common people. Their world is bounded in some ways, yet full in others, shaped by weather, labor, faith, memory, and the needs of the household. And as the day continues, village life will begin to gather into its social spaces too. The lane, the well, the green, the market road, the church path, all the places where people do not only work side by side, but speak, exchange news, share worries, and mark the passing seasons together. That quieter social world is where we will go next, as afternoon leans gently toward evening. By the middle of the day, village life is not only about labor, it is also about people moving in and out of one another's presence, crossing the same lanes, sharing the same spaces, and quietly shaping a community through habit and familiarity. A medieval English village in the 1300s is small enough that most people know one another well. They know who has recently lost a cow, who has a daughter nearing marriage age, whose roof needs repair, whose children are quick and lively, and which older villager remembers many winters past. News does not travel through written notices pinned to a wall. It travels by voice, by repetition, by encounter near the well, in the churchyard, beside the oven, on the road to market, or at the edge of a field. The social life of ordinary people is not separate from work. It is woven through it. Two women speaking while carrying water are also exchanging local knowledge. Men standing together after checking a boundary ditch are also measuring one another's worries about the weather. Children playing near the green are also learning who belongs to which household and what is expected in village life. Conversation is often practical. Who needs help with harvest, whether the mill is busy, whether rain may come by evening, whether the priest has announced a coming feast day, whether a cart can be borrowed, whether a sheep has wandered. Yet alongside these practical matters, there is also laughter, teasing, memory, and the simple comfort of being known. For people whose lives are physically demanding and materially modest, the company of neighbors can be a quiet form of wealth. A person who is not entirely alone in hardship is in a better place than one who stands outside the circle of village familiarity. Shared labor, shared prayer, shared weather, and shared routine create bonds that can become very strong over time. At the heart of many villages stands the church.
For ordinary villagers, the church is not only a religious building, it is one of the main centers of community life. Its bell marks important moments. Its holy days shape the yearly calendar. Its yard gathers the living and the dead in one place. Its presence reminds people that their daily struggles exist within a larger order of meaning, hope, duty, and tradition. On Sundays and feast days, villagers come in cleaner clothes when possible, perhaps wearing their better tunic, better cloak, or more carefully arranged head covering. These garments may still be plain, but they are treated with respect. The walk to church is one of the regular social movements of village life. Families emerge from cottages, children guided along muddy paths, older villagers taking steady steps, neighbors greeting one another in quiet voices. Inside the church, the air is cooler than outside, touched by stone, candle smoke, and faint dampness. Light falls softly through narrow windows. People stand, kneel, listen, cross themselves, and follow forms of worship that are deeply familiar. Not everyone understands every word in the same way, especially when services are conducted in Latin, but the rhythm of observance is still clear. The church speaks through ceremony, gesture, music, bells, the church year, and repetition. Important life events pass through this space: baptisms, marriages, burials, public announcements, acts of remembrance. It is in the church and churchyard that villagers most strongly feel themselves part of something beyond one single household. The church year also gives variety to time. There are fasts and feasts, saints' days, seasons of solemn reflection, and days of celebration. For people whose labor often follows the land in repeating cycles, these sacred intervals bring shape to the year. They offer moments of gathering, special food when possible, processions, singing, and a change in feeling from ordinary workdays. Even those most occupied with practical survival live with the church as a constant presence in the background of village life. If we leave the church path and return to the homes, we find another important center of social life, the household itself. Family in medieval village life is not simply emotional closeness, though that certainly exists. It is also a working unit. A household functions best when its members support one another through labor, care, teaching, and endurance. Roles are shaped by age, strength, gender, custom, and need, but necessity often softens strict boundaries. When something must be done, whoever can do it may help. Parents teach children not with long formal lessons, but through doing. A girl may learn to knead dough by standing beside her mother. A boy may learn to guide animals by walking with his father. A child may learn how to sort dried peas, wash a bowl, gather herbs, or patch a torn sleeve simply by being present at the task until the motions become natural. Meals are one of the few points in the day when the household may gather in the same place, though even then someone may still be tending the fire or finishing a chore. Food is shared according to what there is. Older people may eat slowly, small children may grow sleepy by the hearth, and adults may speak in short, practical ways about what tomorrow requires. At night, when work begins to loosen its grip, stories may be told in simple form: a memory of a difficult winter,
a tale of a local saint, a caution about wandering too far into the woods, a family recollection about a marriage, a lost animal, a strange weather season, or the behavior of a clever dog. Such moments are not necessarily grand performances, they are part of the oral life of the household. Marriage among ordinary people is often rooted in practical partnership as well as affection. A household needs labor, steadiness, children if possible, and mutual support. Love may grow slowly within shared duty. There is tenderness in these homes, though it may not always be displayed with softness in every moment. A cup offered, a place made by the fire, a cloak adjusted over a sleeping child, a bowl set aside for someone returning late from work. These are small acts, but they carry feeling. Old age, too, has its place in the household when one is fortunate enough to reach it. Older villagers may do less heavy field labor, but they still hold value through memory, advice, watching children, mending, sorting, and preserving knowledge of customs and weather patterns. In a world where much is learned by experience, the old carry a quiet authority. Not every day is a market day, but markets matter greatly in village life. Some villages are too small to hold large regular markets themselves, so people may travel to a nearby town or larger settlement. The market road becomes a thread connecting the quiet village to the wider world. Along this road come traders, peddlers, drovers, and sometimes news from beyond the familiar fields. For ordinary villagers, going to market can be both work and a change of scene. A woman may carry eggs, butter, or spun thread. A man may bring grain, wool, or a small crafted item. Some go to sell, others to buy what cannot easily be made at home. Salt, iron goods, better cloth, needles, tools, pottery, and other useful items may be obtained through exchange or coin when possible. The market itself is busier than the village, but still ordered by custom. Stalls, baskets, voices, animals, carts, and the scent of food, wool, leather, and damp earth mingle together. Here villagers see different faces, hear accents from nearby places, and catch fragments of larger events from travelers and merchants. Yet even this more active environment is not detached from the slow world of the countryside. A market is still deeply tied to bread, cloth, livestock, and the tools of survival. It is commerce, yes, but of a practical and grounded kind. Goods are weighed in the mind as much by usefulness as by price. The return from market often carries more than objects. It carries news, perhaps word of weather in another district, perhaps mention of rising costs, a coming fair, a marriage in another village, or a new official order from beyond the local manor. Such news settles into evening conversation back home, expanding the village imagination a little without ever fully loosening its ties to local life. Village life is not all one long, plain stretch of labor. The year contains pauses, bright points, and shared traditions that bring variety and meaning.
Feast days linked to the church calendar may bring better food if a household can manage it, or at least a change from ordinary routine. On some days, work is reduced or paused, though practical needs never vanish entirely. There may be bells, prayers, processions, seasonal songs, or a gathering at which neighbors stand a little closer together and speak a little longer than usual. Seasonal customs are important too. The first signs of spring, the height of haymaking, the beginning of harvest, the storing of winter food, and midwinter observances all shape village feeling. People notice these turning points because survival depends on them, but they also carry emotional meaning. A successful harvest can bring visible relief. A mild spring can stir hope. The first deep cold may quiet the whole village in a different way. Weddings, if they take place, are social occasions noticed by all. So are christenings and funerals. The village marks these passages together. Life is communal not only in joy, but in sorrow and remembrance. The church bell sounds differently in the heart when it calls people to mourning. Music exists in this world too, though not always in formal settings. Singing during work, a tune remembered for a feast, the simple use of pipe or drum on special occasions, all may be found. Dancing may appear at celebrations, especially where there is enough food, enough light, and enough reason to lay work aside for a few hours. For ordinary people, these moments do not erase hardship, but they soften it. They remind villagers that the year is made not only of duty, but of pattern, ceremony, and shared memory. Beneath the familiar routines of the village stands a wider structure of power and duty. Many ordinary villagers in medieval England live under the authority of a manor. This means that land, labor, and rights are shaped by arrangements tied to a local lord or estate. Some villagers hold land in return for labor services. Others pay rent in produce, coin, or work. The exact details vary, but for many families, their lives are not entirely their own to order as they wish. Certain days may be owed to work on the Lord's land rather than one's own strips. Grain may need to be milled at a particular mill. Woodland use, grazing rights, and access to common resources can be governed by custom and obligation. Village officials, such as the reeve or other local figures, may help manage these expectations. To ordinary people, these structures are part of the air of life, ever present, often burdensome, and seldom easy to escape. Yet even here, daily life continues in practical forms. A man still must mend his hoe, a woman still must bake bread, a child still runs beside the lane. Large structures of authority exist, but they are experienced through specific local demands, a due payment, a labor day, a boundary dispute, a required task. Survival depends not only on working hard, but on meeting these obligations while still preserving enough for one's own household. This balancing act can shape every season. A poor harvest does not always reduce what is owed. A household that loses an animal still must find a way forward. Small setbacks ripple outward quickly. This is one reason why village cooperation matters so much. Neighbors may lend tools, witness agreements, help gather crops, or simply share information that prevents a mistake. In a narrow world of limited margin, practical kindness can make a real difference. As afternoon light stretches slowly across the village, work continues in many forms. There is always maintenance to be done. Hedges need cutting, roofs need patching, walls crack and must be repaired with fresh daub. Wooden handles split and need replacing. Nets, baskets, and sacks wear thin. Leather must be conditioned or stitched. Seeds must be sorted. Grain must be guarded from damp and pests. Women continue spinning, carding wool, sewing seams, brewing ale, preserving food, and caring for the flow of household life. Brewing is especially important in many homes, not as a luxury, but as part of ordinary nourishment and domestic economy. Baking, too, may happen in cycles, depending on access to an oven and the household's grain supply. Men may split firewood, clear drains, shape fence posts, cart manure to fields, or check the condition of tools before the next day. Some tasks are seasonal and urgent, while others are constant and quiet. A village survives because countless small acts of upkeep are repeated faithfully.
Even rest, when it comes, is often half work. A person sitting may still be mending. A person talking may still be shelling peas, cutting fodder, twisting rope, or sorting wool. Idleness in the modern sense is rare among ordinary villagers. Stillness exists, but usually with purpose close by. And yet, despite all this labor and obligation, village life can hold a deep sense of belonging. People know the sound of one another's footsteps on the lane. They know who coughs in winter, who sings while spinning, who keeps a tidy yard, who has the best onions, who speaks little but works steadily, who tells old stories to children near the fire. Familiarity is everywhere. This closeness can bring comfort. It can also bring watchfulness, gossip, and the pressure of custom. In a small village, little passes entirely unnoticed. A quarrel may be known quickly. A failed duty may be discussed. A household in trouble may find both sympathy and judgment nearby. Community is warm, but it is also close. Still, when evening begins to approach and the light softens over the fields, that same closeness can feel reassuring. Smoke rises again from many roofs. Figures return along the paths. Voices drift between cottages. Animals are gathered. Doors open and close. The village draws itself inward after the long hours of the day. Now the sun has moved lower. The brightness of midday begins to mellow into warmer tones. Shadows from cottages lengthen across the ground. In the fields, workers begin to think not of beginning, but of finishing what can be finished before night. Bundles are collected. Tools are lifted. Hands brush dust from clothing. The body feels the full weight of the day's effort.
Children who have been helping grow quieter or more restless with tiredness. The yard near each cottage fills with final tasks: water for evening, fuel for the fire, feed for animals, a last look at the garden rows, a hen coaxed in, a gate secured, a pot prepared for the next meal. This gentle turning point, when the village begins to fold back toward hearth and darkness, is one of the softest moments in the medieval day. And in the next step, we will follow that quiet descent into evening and night, into the smoky warmth of the cottage, the fading of work, the simple meal by firelight, the sounds outside after sunset, and the peaceful darkness that settles over an ordinary English village in the 1300s. Now the day begins to soften. The work is not truly over, not all at once, but it loosens little by little. The hard brightness of afternoon fades into a gentler light, and the village changes its feeling. Fields that were busy a short while ago begin to empty. The men and boys who worked there start back along the worn paths, tools over their shoulders, boots marked with earth, their steps slower now than they were in the morning. From the edges of the village come the familiar movements of return. A cow is led in, a gate creaks, a bundle of brushwood is set down beside a wall. Someone pauses for a moment before entering the cottage, looking out across the fields as the sky turns pale gold and then softer still. Birds move lower through the hedges. The wind, if there is any, seems quieter than before. The village lane is full of small final tasks. A woman shakes crumbs from a cloth. Another draws one more bucket of water before darkness deepens. A child is called back from the edge of the green. Chickens are gathered in. A dog circles once and settles near the doorway. Smoke thickens above the cottages as fires are fed for the evening meal. Inside the homes, the hearth becomes the center once more.
The room is dimmer now, and the orange glow of the fire begins to shape everything. It catches on the rim of a pot, on the edge of a wooden bench, on the worn folds of a cloak hanging from a peg. The smoke rises and drifts in familiar patterns. A person who has lived in such a house all their life hardly notices how much of the evening is lit not by clear, bright light, but by fire, ember, and shadow. This is the hour when bodies feel the full measure of the day. Hands are sore, feet are tired, shoulders carry the memory of labor. But there is comfort, too, in the return home. However humble the cottage may be, however smoky, however cold in winter or close in summer, it is the place where the day gathers itself back together. The evening meal is often the most settling point in the day. It may still be simple, as most meals are, a pot of pottage warmed again on the hearth, bread cut and shared, perhaps onions, cheese, or a little butter if the household has it, perhaps a small piece of salted meat or bacon to flavor the meal, though often not much. If the season has been kind, there may be fresh cabbage, beans, peas, or leeks from the garden. In autumn, there may be apples or a handful of nuts. In a better household, there may be more variety. In a poorer one, less.
Still, what matters in this hour is not abundance, but warmth and steadiness. The family gathers close because the room itself invites closeness. There is no wide, bright space to spread into. People sit on stools, benches, or near the hearth. Bowls are passed. Bread is torn by hand. Steam rises briefly in the dim room. Someone blows across a spoonful of hot pottage before tasting it. A child leans sleepily against an older shoulder. Someone speaks about what remains to be done tomorrow. Ale may be poured in modest quantity, weak and familiar, part of ordinary nourishment rather than celebration. If there is milk, it may be used carefully. If there is enough grain, the meal feels secure. If stores are running low, the tone of the household may grow quieter. Even at supper, the future is present in people's thoughts. How much food remains, how long until the next baking, whether the weather will hold, whether the animals are well. And yet there is often peace in the very plainness of this meal. The day's labor is behind them. The fire is close. The household is together. Outside, the lane is darkening. Inside, there is a little circle of warmth. After the meal, the home does not fall immediately into sleep. There is often more quiet work to do by the hearth. A tear in a sleeve may be mended. Wool may be spun a little longer while light remains. A shoe may be checked for wear. A harness strap may be repaired. Grain may be sorted. Herbs may be tied and hung. Someone may trim a wick or tend a candle if the household can spare one. Candles are useful, but not endless. They cost labor and material. Many ordinary people do not burn them freely for long evening activity. Tallow candles may be used when needed, and richer households may have better light. But among common villagers, the main source of evening glow remains the fire itself. Because light is limited, life after sunset becomes naturally slower. People do not fill the dark hours with endless tasks. They do what must be done, what can be done, and then settle closer to rest. The shape of the night encourages quiet. There may be low conversation. A husband and wife speak softly about the coming days. An older person remembers how early the frost came in another year. A child asks a question about a saint's day, about the market, about a neighbor's pig, about the moon outside. Someone laughs gently. Someone coughs.
Someone yawns and rubs tired eyes with the back of a work-worn hand. The sounds inside the house are small and intimate. The stir of the pot, the crackle of wood, the shift of straw bedding, the rustle of wool, the scrape of a stool across the floor. In such a room, no sound is very far away. Step outside now, just for a moment, and stand in the lane as night comes over the village.
The last color is leaving the sky. The western edge still holds a little fading light, but the cottages are already becoming dark shapes under their thatched roofs. Here and there a glow shows through a shutter or a doorway not yet closed. Smoke lifts into the evening air and disappears into gathering darkness. The village is much quieter now. No carts rattle through the lane, no market voices rise. The work sounds of the day are gone. In their place come the sounds of evening, a distant owl, the shifting of animals in their pens, the soft complaint of geese settling down, the faint bark of a dog, the wind along the eaves, the last murmur of human voices from behind cottage walls. There are no street lamps lighting the road. Beyond the home's fire glow, darkness settles deeply. On a clear night, the stars appear with great sharpness above the village, scattered across the sky over field and church tower alike. The moon, when it is bright, becomes important. It lays pale silver across the roofs, the lane, the edges of the fields, and turns familiar things into softer shapes. Night in medieval England is not empty, but it is more complete than many later ages would know. Darkness truly arrives. It changes movement. It changes thought. It draws people inward. Those who must go out after dark do so carefully. A lantern may be carried if there is one, but many simply know the paths by memory. Feet remember where the ground dips. Hands know how to find the latch. Eyes learn to work with little light. Still, most of the village prefers to settle in once night has fallen. The church bell, if heard in the evening, travels farther now in the still air. It seems larger in the dark, as if the whole village is listening. When it is time to sleep, the process is simple and familiar. The fire may be banked carefully, covered and arranged so that embers remain alive until morning. This matters greatly. To wake to a house that still holds the possibility of warmth is better than starting from cold ash. A pot may be moved aside, a bucket checked, the door fastened. The animals, if close by, become part of the house's nighttime world through their sounds and smells. Bedding is modest. Straw-filled mattresses, pallets, rough blankets, simple linen where available. People may share sleeping space according to the size of the home and the shape of the household. A loft, if the house has one, may hold some sleepers. Others rest in the main room. Privacy is limited. Warmth is shared. The body, after a day of labor, often falls toward sleep quickly. Muscles ache, but that ache may itself help rest come sooner. Children sleep first. Older people settle slowly. A last few words may be exchanged in the dark. Then the room grows quieter. The air may still smell of smoke, wool, old wood, and cooked grain. The thatch above may whisper faintly in the wind. If rain comes, it sounds softly overhead. If winter cold presses in, people draw blankets close and turn toward whatever warmth remains. If summer air is mild, the house may feel gentler, though never entirely still. And then sleep comes to the village, household by household, until only a few lights remain, and even those are gone. As the night deepens, let us linger a little longer over the deeper textures of this world.
Ordinary villagers in 1300s England lived in a society shaped by land, custom, and obligation. Much of life was not arranged by personal choice in the modern sense, but by birth, season, local rule, and inherited expectation. People knew where they belonged in the village order, and that order was reinforced by the manor, the church, the family, and the yearly demands of agriculture. The open field system, so common in many places, meant that land was shared in pattern even when worked by different households. Villagers depended on one another not only socially, but practically. The timing of plowing, sowing, fallowing, and harvest was often collective. One household could not always move entirely at its own pace if the wider system required coordination. Tools were simple compared with those of later ages, but they were the result of careful skill. A plow, a sickle, a flail, a wooden rake, a cartwheel, a leather harness. Each object carried labor within it. Making and maintaining such things required knowledge built slowly over generations. In a world where few objects were disposable, maintenance was as important as making. Food, too, reflected deep adaptation to local conditions. Barley and oats were important in many places because they could endure where finer grains might fail. Pottage remained central because it was flexible, economical, and nourishing. Bread was treasured because grain was the foundation of life. Salt was important because it preserved food. Ale mattered because it was safe, familiar, and useful. Even the humblest meal was part of a long chain of field work, grinding, carrying, storage, fire tending, and cooking. Cloth production was another quiet foundation of village existence. Wool from sheep, spun on hand, woven into cloth, cut and sewn into garments, was one of the great materials of English life. Spinning was not an occasional hobby, it was ongoing labor. Much of the comfort people wore in cold weather began as many hours of patient handwork near the hearth. The home itself was part shelter, part workshop, part kitchen, part sleeping place. Rooms were not sharply divided by function. Life overlapped. The same fire cooked supper, warmed hands, dried clothing, gave light for mending tools, and glowed beside the sleeping family at night.
Seasonality shaped everything. Spring called people outward to prepare and plant. Summer stretched the working day long. Autumn demanded gathering and storage. Winter turned attention inward toward maintenance, endurance, and careful use of stores. To live well, or at least safely, meant preparing in one season for the needs of another. Even sound was seasonal. Summer held insects, birds, scythes through grass, and distant field calls. Winter held wind, bare branches, doors against cold, and closer domestic sounds around the hearth. Medieval villagers lived so close to the natural year that each season had its own labor, smell, and music. And over all of it moved the church calendar, giving spiritual shape to agricultural time. Feasts, fasts, Sundays, saints' days, and holy seasons reminded people that earthly labor and sacred rhythm belonged to the same lived world. Perhaps one of the deepest truths about ordinary life in medieval England is that it was built from repetition. Not repetition as dullness, but repetition as structure. The same fire laid each morning, the same bucket lifted from the well, the same path taken to the field, the same loaf divided among family, the same hand motions learned in childhood and practiced into old age, the same church bell over years and years, the same stars appearing over thatched roofs at night. This kind of life could be hard, certainly.
It could be uncertain, cold, hungry, and demanding, but it also carried a kind of steadiness. People knew their tools, their seasons, their neighbors, their animals, their prayers, and their duties. Meaning was often found not in novelty, but in continuity. A cottage did not need to be grand to hold a life. A bowl of pottage did not need to be rich to bring comfort. A village lane did not need to be wide to be well known. A day did not need to be easy to feel complete. There is something quiet in that thought, something patient. And now, as night settles fully over the village, let us rest here for one last moment. The fields are dark, the church stands silent, the lane is empty except for moonlight and shadow. Inside the cottages, the fires have burned lower. Families sleep beneath wool and straw, beneath timber and thatch, while outside the cool air moves gently over the land. Tomorrow, before dawn, the village will wake again. A rooster will call, smoke will rise, doors will open, hands will return to bread, to water, to wool, to tools, to earth. The routines of ordinary life will begin once more, quietly, faithfully, as they have for many seasons. And perhaps that is the true heart of this world. Not the noise of kings or the walls of castles, but the patient lives of villagers whose days were shaped by weather, work, family, faith, and firelight. People who rose with the light, ate simple meals, kept warm as best they could, shared what they had, and ended each evening under a dark and star-filled sky. If you listen closely, you can almost still hear them. The soft footstep in the lane, the crackle of the hearth, the distant bell, the murmur of evening prayer, the rustle of straw bedding, the wind passing over open fields. And now those sounds, too, begin to fade. The fire sinks lower, the cottage grows still, the village rests. And slowly, very gently, the night carries everything into silence.